Existenz is a David Cronenberg film from the late 90s starring Jennifer Jason Leigh and Jude Law in one of his few good films because he's made a lot of bad films. This is a good one. And basically, Cronenberg looks at virtual reality and looks at how we're going to interact with virtual reality and how people interact with reality. The plot is basically Jennifer Jason Leigh is a designer of games. These games are virtual reality games. You plug in and your reality changes, and you have to start to you have to work through this world trying to work out what reality is, what is not reality, and you have to try and basically go through scenarios and survive the scenarios. So the technology is biological based, so it plugs in and actually uses your own human body energy to keep you involved in the virtual reality. So Jennifer Jason Leigh is the artist who creates this, and she's on the run because realists basically think this is an abomination against reality, and she should be killed because she's destroying people's basic knowledge of what humanity is, what people are, and she's creating this abomination in their view that has to be stopped. So basically you've got like a jihad against gamers. And as you follow through this world, which you quickly realise might be a virtual reality world in the first place, you watch the paranoia set in as they try and go from place to place. They don't know who they can trust, who they can't trust, and they start to go into other worlds because they get what is apparently her game. So you go into her game, but you think the reality you were before might be a virtual reality as well. And it twists and turns through what's reality and what's not. And you never quite know what reality is true and what reality is false. So in some ways it's proving the point of the realists. But on the other hand, it's also showing the great part of this whole technology is like people are inventing, people are actually creating new lives themselves, new worlds themselves, and are experiencing things they couldn't experience in real life. So it shows both sides of the argument, but it doesn't do it in a way that's polemic. It's just like you watch them through scenes working stuff out, and you watch them through scenes of working out things that seem normal. There's other times I watch the working stuff out that seems surreal and pre-programmed and very gamey, and it's all actually about is how do people exist in reality, because anyone can be offended by anything, whether it's virtual reality, religion, anything that changes your view of what reality is. And you can be offended by it and say this cannot be real, this cannot exist, it has to be stopped. So it's all about how people's minds can get twisted and how the virtual reality is just another reality that people can use pro and con, and it's not ultimately about virtual reality, it's about what people think and how people react and how reality can get twisted for anybody. So it's a wonderful film. It's also funny. It's probably one of Cronenberg's funniest films because Jennifer Jason Leigh is really funny in the film. And Jude Law is a good straight man in this film because he's the guy who doesn't like any technology and who's very scared of it. There's lots of good jokes about that, and there's jokes about people with dodgy accents, dialogue scenes that are a bit stiff intentionally, and there's jokes about that and how there's always changing it around like, this is reality, this is fiction, or is it? Because everything is very twisted and weird, and it changes your view all the time of what's actually going on. It doesn't tell you definitely this is what's going on. So it's a wonderful film. It's way ahead of its time, which now, it looks a lot better now than it did at the time because the technology it's talking about is now getting close to reality, but also looks at things that weren't as apparent when it was released, which was what's actually reality to a person, which I don't think was. There's lots of stuff like Fight Club at the time when it was released, or The Matrix, which were much more like extreme versions of it because they were about fighting against a man or something. And this is much more like about human reality and your own actual responsibility to make it up for yourself and don't blame others. So it's a much more complicated film. I think it was just too complicated for the time. So the film suffered a little bit when it was released, but now it looks amazing because there aren't any dodgy effects to screw it up. There aren't any weirdness that's not intentional. It's actually just about how people react to reality and how people can get freaked out. And it's a comedy and it's a sci-fi movie, and it's because the situation is funny, and they actually bring that up as a funny thing, watching people stumble through what's real and what's not. So that's Existenz.